Long before the sands of Egypt were measured by the shadows of pyramids, the world was governed by the rhythmic pulse of the Nile and the shifting light of the sky. In the celestial courts of Heliopolis, the Ennead ruled with absolute authority, maintaining the balance of Mat against the encroaching chaos of the void. Ra, the sun god, journeyed across the heavens by day, but as dusk fell, the realm of the night belonged to a different kind of power. Khonsu, the traveler and the moon god, watched from his lunar bark as the world fell into the embrace of darkness. He was a deity of silver light and hidden wisdom, known as the Pathfinder for those who move beneath the stars. However, Khonsu possessed a nature that was as fickle as the phases of the moon itself. He was a gambler of cosmic proportions. While the other gods concerned themselves with the prayers of mortals, Khonsu found his thrill in the manipulation of time and the weight of destiny. In those ancient days, the year was only 360 days long, a perfect circle that left no room for the unexpected. Nut, the beautiful goddess of the sky, found herself in a state of profound sorrow, for she had fallen under a terrible curse from Ra. Ra, fearing that Nut's children would one day usurp his golden throne, decreed that she could not give birth on any day of any month of the year. Nut wept, for she carried 5 children within her, yet the laws of the universe, anchored by Ra's command, offered her no moment of release. She sought the counsel of Thoth, the god of wisdom, but even the great scribe knew that a decree from the sun god was etched in the fabric of reality. Thoth knew that to save Nut, they did not need a miracle of strength, but a miracle of time that did not yet exist. It was then that Thoth turned his gaze toward the silver brilliance of Khonsu. Knowing the moon god's weakness for a challenge, Khonsu sat upon a throne of obsidian within his lunar palace, tossing a handful of glowing starlight as if they were simple dice. Thoth approached with a humble bow, holding the staff of the caduceus, his eyes reflecting the deep cunning of an intellectual master. "Great Khonsu," Thoth whispered, his voice like the rustling of papyrus, "the heavens speak of your skill, but I wonder if even you can win against the master of wisdom." Khonsu leaned forward, his silver eyes narrowing with interest, the light of the moon intensifying at the prospect of a wager. "You offer a game, Thoth?" Khonsu asked, his voice echoing like a bell in the silent void. What could a scribe possibly offer that the moon god does not already possess? Thoth smiled, a thin, knowing expression. "I offer a portion of my own divine essence, but in return, I ask for a portion of your light." Khonsu laughed, a sound that sent ripples across the celestial Nile. "Light is my lifeblood, Thoth. If I lose too much, I shall fade into nothingness." "Then let us play Senate," Thoth proposed, gesturing to the ancient board of 30 squares that represented the journey of the soul. Khonsu agreed, for he believed his mastery over the cycles of the night gave him an edge that no other god could match. The two deities sat across from one another, the board between them glowing with an ethereal blue radiance that illuminated the dark corners of the cosmos. The stakes were high. For every game Khonsu lost, he would surrender 1/72 of his moonlight to the ibis-headed god. They played for hours, then days, in a realm where the concept of day was starting to lose its meaning. As the silver and green energies of the gods clashed over the board, Thoth moved his pieces with cold, mathematical precision, calculating every possible outcome and every trap before his fingers even touched the wood. Khonsu, however, played with the intuition of the tide, sometimes aggressive like a flooding river, sometimes retreating into the silent shadows of the new moon. Each throw of the casting sticks echoed like thunder in the halls of heaven, marking the transition of power from the lunar disk to the scribe's jars. The silver light of the moon began to flicker and dim as Thoth won the first match, claiming a tiny fragment of Khonsu's brilliance with a triumphant nod. Khonsu grew frustrated, his pride pricked by the scribe's success, and he doubled his efforts in the second round, channeling the fierce energy of the night. But Thoth was not merely a god of books, he was the architect of the cosmos, the one who counted the stars and knew the weight of every soul. Game after game, Khonsu watched in silent disbelief as his silver treasure was drained, piece by piece, into Thoth's waiting vessels of crystal and gold. The atmosphere grew heavy with the weight of uncreated hours, as the very fabric of reality stretched to accommodate the new temporal fragments being won. By the time the final match concluded, Thoth had accumulated enough moonlight to create 5 entirely new days, shimmering with stolen lunar radiance. These 5 days were unique and holy. They did not belong to any month, they had no ancestors, and they were not part of the calendar Ra had cursed. Khonsu looked at his diminished self, now thinner and paler than ever before, realizing he had been outplayed by the very wisdom he had once underestimated. Yet, there was no malice in his silver heart, for the game had been the most exhilarating experience of his immortal existence, a true test of his divinity. Thoth took the stolen light, and with a wave of his hand wove it into the fabric of the year, inserting the epigomenal days at the end of the harvest season. Nut rejoiced as she felt the cosmic constraints loosen, for these new days were outside of her jurisdiction, allowing her to finally bring her children into the world. On the first day, Osiris was born, destined to become the king of the underworld and the symbol of eternal resurrection and grain. On the second day came Horus the Elder, a warrior of the sky whose eyes would eventually hold the sun and the moon in perfect equilibrium. The third day saw the birth of Set, the god of storms and red sands, whose chaotic strength would both protect and threaten the gods for eternity. Isis followed on the fourth day, the mistress of magic and the mother of healing, whose love would eventually bridge the gap between life and death. Finally, on the fifth day, Nephthys was born, the guardian of the transition and the protector of the canopic jars. These 5 deities, born from the gamble of Khonsu, completed the great Aeneid and secured the future of Egypt against the void. Ra was furious when he discovered the trickery, but even the sun god could not undo what had been woven into the tapestry of time. By the moon and the scribe, he looked upon the moon and saw that it was no longer a constant, unyielding sphere of light, but a changing entity. Because Khonsu had lost so much of his essence, the moon was forced to wax and wane, forever struggling to regain its full glory before fading again. This is why, even today, the moon grows small and disappears for 3 days of darkness before returning as a sliver of hope in the night sky. Khonsu became the god of healing because he understood the pain of loss and the profound joy that comes with renewal and rebirth. He was no longer just a lonely traveler, he was the keeper of the calendar, the one who ensured that time flowed as it should for all living things. In the temples of Thebes, the priests sang hymns to Khonsu, thanking him for the extra days that allowed the Nile to rise and the harvest to thrive. They depicted him as a young man with a side lock of youth, wearing the lunar disk and crescent upon his head, symbolizing his eternal vitality. But within the shadows of the temple, the elders whispered of the game of time and the danger of gambling with a god whose heart is as cold as the night. Khonsu remained a complex figure, sometimes a protector of the innocent, and other times a fierce judge who consumed the hearts of the wicked. He was often called Khonsu Pakerd, the child, representing the new moon and the infinite potential of all beginnings. Yet he was also Khonsu Waset Neferhotep, the one who is perfect in peace, reflecting the full moon's calm and radiant wisdom. His influence extended beyond the sky, touching the very hearts of the people who lived and died along the banks of the sacred Nile. Women prayed to him for fertility and safe passage through childbirth, believing that the moon's phases govern the very cycles of life. Travelers sought his silver light to guide them through the treacherous deserts, where the darkness could swallow a man's soul if he lost his way. Even the pharaohs looked to Khonsu for legitimacy, seeing in his silver hand the power to measure their reign and grant them millions of years. But Khonsu never forgot the game he played with Thoth, and he often looked toward the scribe's temple with a mix of respect, rivalry, and hidden kinship. He knew that the balance of the world required both the brilliance of the sun and the deep, silent mystery of the moon. Without the darkness, the light would have no meaning, and without the gamble, there would be no evolution or growth in the divine realm. The Aeneid gathered in council at the edge of the world, acknowledging that Khonsu's sacrifice had prevented a stagnation of the divine bloodline. Osiris took his place as the ruler of the earth, teaching men the sacred arts of agriculture, the making of wine, and the laws of justice. Isis stood beside him, her magic protecting the land from the ancient shadows that lurked in the corners of the world, where the light did not reach. Set, though volatile and often feared, served a vital purpose in testing the strength of the gods and defending the solar bark from the great serpent Apophis. Nephthys and Horus the Elder provided the hidden wisdom and the sharp vision needed to navigate the complexities of mortal and immortal existence. All of this was possible because a moon god dared to sit at a game board and bet his very essence against the smartest mind in the universe. Khonsu's story is a permanent reminder that even the gods must face the consequences of their actions and the reality of change. His waning light is a symbol of humility, a mark of a deity who gave a piece of himself so that the cosmos could expand and breathe. As the centuries passed, the cult of Khonsu grew in power, and his temple at Karnak became one of the most majestic structures in the ancient world. Pilgrims came from the furthest reaches of the empire to ask for his healing touch, leaving offerings of silver, lapis lazuli, and fine incense. They believed that Khonsu could drive out the demons of sickness and madness, just as he had driven back the darkness of Nut's curse. The moon continued its celestial dance, a silver coin tossed across the velvet sky by an invisible hand, a reminder of the eternal wager. Sometimes the moon is full and proud, echoing the moment before the game began, when Khonsu held all the light in the heavens. Other times, it is a thin crescent, reflecting the heavy losses Khonsu suffered at the hands of Thoth in that timeless chamber. But it always returns, for Khonsu is the traveler who never stops moving, never stops searching for the next path across the stars. In the modern world, We look up at the moon and see a cold, barren rock, but the ancients saw a living, breathing God of infinite complexity. They saw the embracer, the one who holds the night in his arms and protects the sleeping world from the terrors of the void. The story of Khonsu is not just about a game. It is about the origin of the world we know and the structure of our reality. It explains why our years have 365 days instead of 360, and why the rhythm of our lives is forever tied to the waxing and waning of the lunar cycle. It speaks to the character of the Egyptian gods, beings of immense power, who were yet prone to emotion, desire, sacrifice, and play. Khonsu, with his silver hand and his gambler's heart, remains one of the most fascinating and misunderstood figures of the Aeneid. He represents the unpredictability of time, the chance encounters, and the strategic risks that change our lives and our destinies forever. When you feel that time is slipping through your fingers, remember the moon god who played for every second, every minute, and every hour. When you see the moon hiding behind a cloud, remember the god who surrendered his own light so that new life could flourish on earth. The sands of Egypt may have buried the temples and the names of the priests, but the spirit of the myth lives on in every sunrise and every moonset. The Aeneid still watches from the silent stars, their stories etched into the constellations that will overhead in an eternal cycle of renewal. And Khonsu still sails his silver bark, a silent guardian of the night, a witness to the passing of ages and the rise and fall of civilizations. He is the master of the months, the divider of years, and the celestial healer who mends the broken spirits of those who look upward. His legacy is the very air we breathe during those 5 extra days of the year, a gift of time carved out from the silence of the void. So, the next time you look up at the night sky and see that familiar silver disk, give a moment of thought to the Pathfinder and his gamble. Wonder at the silver light that was once lost in a game of Senate, and then found again in the hearts of those who keep the ancient traditions alive. For in the game of time, we are all players on a giant board, and the stakes are nothing less than our own journey through the infinite stars. Khonsu invites us to embrace the changes of life, to find wisdom in the waning of our strength, and to find new power in the waxing of our spirits. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the ancient mysteries of the Nile. Don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe to Channel Storycraft Studio for more legends of the gods.